Hi there, Adrian here, mortgage broker based in Sydney. On this channel we talk about all things lending, finance and investments. And on this video we're going to discuss the origins behind why I became a property investor. Okay, this is going to be very uncut, this is going to be very freestyle, and I'm going to go into main two drivers on why I chose to go down this path. Now, you've got to understand that my background's in lending and I sit down with clients pretty much every day of the week. So the first main driver on why I started into property investing was I saw so many people, and I call them, in the system or in the matrix. And they do what society thinks that they should do in the order that society tells them to, but then it doesn't give them what they actually want, which is freedom, lifestyle, extra money, and not having to work so hard later on in life. All right, so I sit down in front of these wealthy people, 2, 3, 400 grand household incomes. Some of them are two IT contractors on 150 grand plus each, and some of them have a couple of kids. I see so many common things, like getting two SUVs, anywhere from 60 to 120 grand each, and then getting car finance on both of them. Taking the holiday every year, okay, that's 5, 10, 15 grand depending on the size of your family. Okay, getting the house that's close to Sydney, because I live in South Sydney, and you can't even get within, say, 30 to 40k radius in south of Sydney for less than 1.5 million now for any decent sized house in an okay area. And if you want to go to my parents' area, a little fibro shack on 700 square meters just sold up the street from my parents' house for 2.1 million. And that's AUD for anyone from the international. All right, so I see all these things, and if you put that 2.1 million into perspective, even if you've got a 20% deposit, that's a 1.6 plus million dollar mortgage. To service that from a bank level, you would have to have minimum 6 to 7 times income. And if I get a calculator out, okay, I'm just going to bring that up now. I've got my phone in front of me. All right, so we do 1.6 million and then divide that by 6. That means that your household income needs to be a minimum $266,000 a year combined at a bare minimum to support a mortgage that size, and you're at 6 debt to income ratio. All right, so even if you're at 300 or 400,000 income, you are still leveraged to the hilt. And if you add in 2 kids, and if you add in 2 SUVs, and then you add in your yearly holiday, and then you add in the nicer school that may cost a little bit more, or some parents want their kids to go to private school, you are living paycheck to paycheck. So you are the wealthiest 20 to 25% of households, but you are living in a lifestyle that is never going to let you exit the system. All right, so that's where I started, that's what I saw, and I saw so many people do this. They always went for the owner-occupied house first, and even if they went for the cheaper house and then upgraded over time, they were still on a 5 to 10 year plan of maxing themselves out, all right? And once they do that, they're not putting extra money into super, they're not putting money into investments per year, they're not getting 5 to 10 investment properties, which allows them to exit the system. They're not doing any of that. All right, so you're in a system where you go through the education system and they treat you to be a worker. Okay, they treat you to do things in a certain way. They teach you to give the answer that they want for that question, and don't overthink it and don't give them another answer, but you've got to work it out in the way that they want you to work it out in. And then they funnel you through a university system. Half of the education system, the courses that people do in university, they don't even use. So first off, you've got all these kids piling into university. Okay, they don't even consider the job market and what that job market pays and how many jobs there are. And 50% of the people come out with HECS or student debt, and they haven't even thought about their future. And then we wonder why we live in a society society where not many people have financial freedom. Okay, when was the last time in the school system they talked about money, taxes, running a business, anything that could potentially help you exit the system? All right, nothing. You don't hear it at all. And that's why the movement on LinkedIn and YouTube has gotten so big. Because there's these, even APRA and ASIC, they're starting to clamp down on people like Barefoot Investor, who is right on the borderline of giving financial advice. So you never want to go past what he does, okay? Because there's a lot of people that potentially, with some rule changes, he might be in some trouble. All right, but they came out only recently saying these fin influencers, they're calling them, can't even talk about money, investments, taxes, accounting, anything. All right, so the only reason why I can do what I can do and I can talk openly on a channel like this is because I make sure you're aware that anything I say, you go and speak to an accountant, you go and speak to a financial planner. Do not take what I say as gospel, okay? Always go back to your professional. But at the end of the day, I am a business owner, okay? I do have an accounting background. I have a finance background. I have a stock market background, okay? And not just that, I don't talk from a you should do this. I tell you what I'm doing, all right? So I say I'm an investor. I own 6 properties. I'm putting money into super. I'm about to convert to SMSF. So if I do that from that perspective, they can't touch me because I'm not giving advice. I'm just talking about my story and talking about what I'm doing. And I hope that that can awaken people and help people see what you could potentially be doing with your lives. So that's the first one, guys. The first one is, this whole system, and really I've seen it over the last 3 to 5 years, where if you do things on how society wants you to do, and you do things on how your family wants you to do, and they want you in that owner-occupied house, they want you in the nice area, they want you living up the street so you can have your kids and be close to your parents and get the help there, but they don't realize that you're doing it in an order that will not allow you to exit the system until you retire. And most likely, if you're not on a good household income for the whole period of time, most people don't have enough super to retire on. Okay, most people don't, if you look at some of the super stats, most people don't even have enough to maintain their current lifestyle where they've got their income, okay, for 10 years. They can't maintain that. Even if they do a 50% cut, most people can't last until the normal average death rate, which is, in your 80s at the moment in Australia. All right, so you're working your whole life to the bone. You're trying to get a payoff in the end where you can finally not work and live your life, okay? But at the end of the day, once you get into retirement, you're going to be in a situation where you've got to make cuts and cuts and cuts, and there's no lifestyle because you don't have enough money to retire on, and the people that think that they've got enough don't, okay? So they burn through their cash in the first 10 years, and then they're on the age pension, all right? And do you really think that the age pension is going to be around in the next 30 years when all of the baby boomers retire, the wealthiest generation in this country retire, okay, and all of their taxes, all their wealth starts getting converted out of the stock market, out of ETFs, okay, and you're going to have a position where all of their high incomes, they're not earning taxes, okay? We've got a birth rate in this country of under 1.8. All right, so it's not self-sustaining. So the only way that we're going to get out of this and continue having taxes come into the system is by migration doubling and tripling to this country to continue paying for all of these other things for people that no longer work. So the retired, the pensioners, disability, things like that. The system can't function unless you've got lots of taxes coming in, okay? And the more people that retire, and if you look at demographics, we'll be in a situation where the next 5 to 10 years, when all those baby boomers retire finally from the workforce, it's going to have a drastic change in this country on everything like that. And then you've got all these unions that get these, they pay all their dues all year and they think they're going to get a pension. all right? And this is happening across America. They think that they're going to get their pension and it's going to be secure, but what's going to happen if a good portion of that workforce retires? You can't pay all of them the pension unless enough workers come in to pay the dues for their pension or the taxes for people's, So what's going to happen is you're going to be in a situation, I'm age 34, so let's talk about me. Why do I not put a lot of extra money into super until I was maxed out? Let's ask me that question. All right. The reason is when I was, I think, 15 to 20, the average age went up from, I think it was like 63 to 65. And then most recently, it's just about to go up to 67. And when we're dealing with banks, the average retirement age you can declare at a max is age 70. All right, but I'm 34. Realistically, by the time I get to that age, do I honestly think that I can access my super at that age without 30 different changes from now to the point that I can access those funds? All right, you've got a government and you've got a system that's constantly changing the rules, changing the goalposts. All right, and you're in a situation where obviously once I get to my maximum and I've got tax benefits and I've got excess and I can put money into super, of course I'm going to put extra into super and I'm going to put the 27.5 grand each for myself and my wife into super. It's a tax write-off and it compounds money for the next 30 to 35 years in a very tax effective way, which is perfect. All right, but early on in life, I haven't put any excess into super because I don't see it as first off, I don't know if I'm going to get access to it. Second off, I'm taking money out of my current investments to put it into a system where I can't access it, into a system where they're going to change the rules and the goalposts 20 times by the time I get that age. And by the time I get to that age, who says the age of retirement is going to be that at the time that I'm that age? All right, most likely they're going to bump it to like age 70 or 75 or something. All right, but who knows? Okay, there's never been a sit and forget policy. It's constantly band-aided the whole way. All right, so that's that. And then the second one is, we're in a position where the last 3 years, everyone knows what this country has gone through. And I don't mean to get political because I don't want to focus on who's voting for what. I just want to say that I'm a lifetime Liberal voter, okay? And my family's lifetime Liberal, all right? But the last 2.5 years have happened. And I've worked a business, I've been in mortgage broking, everyone's been sitting home, and the longer that the lockdowns went, the better I did, okay? Because more lockdowns happened, more people stayed at home, more people lost their jobs, more people got large fines, more people got, these vaccine mandates, whatever your view is on that, it doesn't matter. The more this stuff came in, the better that I did, because people were sitting at home looking at their budgets, and it was like a home loan refinance boom where everyone wanted to do something at that stage. So on one foot, I'm doing really well for the last 2, 3, 4 years. Okay, but then I'm seeing my family and my friends and everyone around me, they're either getting bankrupted, they're getting locked down, they're being forced to have vaccines, and they're being forced or coerced in their jobs to do things that they don't want to do. So I don't care if you are pro-vaccine or pro-not. I'm more focused on the way this country has gone in the last 2 to 3 years. All right, it's a country where the government is controlling things and the rules are getting heavier. All right, so I got to a stage about probably 3 years ago, so just before things started getting bad with COVID, and it's just before I went completely solo, running my own company as a mortgage broking company, and my income started to tick up. And I used that as a driver to say, I'm going to go at this hard for the next 2, 3 or 4 years. Okay, and if I do it in a systematic way, I can exit that system. All right, so look, we've got a federal election that's coming up as of next week. My personal view is that I don't care who gets voted in. I hope the big four don't get voted in. I hope that there's a political class upheaval, and I hope that a whole lot of independents, I don't care if you're on the left, the right, the middle, and what their policies are. I just hope a whole lot of these Labor, a whole lot of these Liberals, a whole lot of the Greens, a whole lot of the Nationals, I want them all kicked out, and I want 15 to 20 to 25 independents in the Senate and in the House of the House below. All right, so that's all I want. All I want is candidates to actually care about what their people want in their area and advocate for that. Okay, I don't want everyone grouping together and then using the police as a tool to massacre the Australian people and control us, lock us down, mace us, fine us, all for trying to go for a walk down the street. Okay, so really, if you want to look at my second main focus on why I've gone so hard and so quickly, I'll be completely honest with you. I want to exit a system that I don't like, and I want to exit a political class controlling me. Okay, I don't want them to, in a couple of years' time, if another flu comes up or another big event happens and they lock down and they want to bankrupt half the country again, and then I get affected the next time. All right, I want enough investments where I don't care. I've exited the system. I don't need a job. I've got enough money compounding per year, tax-free. I've got enough money coming in, cash flow, to pay my expenses and live the way that I want. And I've got enough money to run, 2, 3 or 4 kid family with my wife. And I've got excess to help out my parents, and I've got an excess to help out, even though I don't like my sister, I'll be honest with you. We've had a couple of clashes the last couple of years, and let's be honest, but do I love her? Absolutely. So I want excess to help my family direct, but I want enough to compound and enough coming in that if any one of my outside family gets affected, I can act as that backstop for the whole family. All right, so that's the inner workings on why I became an investor and why I've gone so hard and why a lot of this FIRE community, and everyone's talking about lean FIRE and fat FIRE and all this bullshit. But let's be completely honest. No one wants to live on 30 to 50 grand a year and hopefully your $1 million in stocks and shares or your $1.5 million doesn't have a 40% correction straight away, and hopefully you don't enter into a 10-year bear market where 30% of your value drops and then your income drops and then you've got to go back to work. So I think a lot of people see this fat FIRE and lean FIRE and coastal FIRE and all this stuff when really you're still in the system. Okay, you're still controlled. You're still affected if big changes come in. So unless you go, I'll be honest with you, my goals are give or take 400 to 500 grand rental income per year. I want a portfolio by the time that I fully retire of over 5.5 million, compounding at a minimum 5% per year. So that's even conservative. A lot of properties in the areas that I bought are 6 and 7 and 8% on average a year, and you've got a 20% year here, and you've got a 10% year here, and then you've got a negative 1%. But 5% is very conservative. So I've got a 5.5 mil portfolio going up 5% a year. So I've got tax-free 250 to 275k a year coming in. Okay, and then I've got rental coming in of 400 to 500 grand a year. That's what I want. And then I'm going to use at least a half of that 400 to 500 grand to continue compounding things into stocks, ETFs. And eventually that's going to compound at a rate of give or take 7 to 9% depending on the market per year. All right, and if I never sell that compounds tax-free as well. So eventually I want to get to a point where at least half of my wealth is compounding every year. All right, and I'm not getting taxed on it because I'm not selling shares. I'm not getting hit with capital gains. I'm not selling houses to get the money out. I'm refinancing the home, okay, pulling money out, and then I'm using that as opposed to selling the property and taking the money out. I'm trying to align my life where the government isn't hitting me as hard from every point of view, okay? The government isn't hitting me with capital gains taxes when I'm selling. The government's not hitting me with my property when I'm selling, and then I've got to pay sales commission, and then I've got to rebuy, I've got to pay stamp duty, and then I've got to pay lenders fees, and then I've got to pay all these other costs to get my money back into the market. So really I'm aligning my life to a point where minimum 5 years, that's where I'll be. Okay, and really I want at least half of my income going up, tax free. And if I can utilize some business structures to keep money inside of a business, even though I'll be in the top tax bracket, if I can align some of my structures to be under a company structure where I get hit with the 25% tax rate, I'm saving another 20+% on my taxes as well. So I'm utilizing an accountant right now, and if you go back to that Kerry Packer speech, you are ludicrous if you are not minimizing your tax in a way that is effective, and because at the end of the day you're giving a government that's throwing money, millions of dollars overseas. You've got a government that's spending money in areas that have nothing to do with you. You got money that's being spent on everything other than that, and other than that you get to the top tax bracket, they tax you there, they hit you with council rates, they hit you with land rates, they hit you with land tax. So people think that they're on the 48-49% tax bracket, when if you look at all the different ways that you're taxed if you start investing, or even if you've just got your owner-occupied property, okay, you got your parking fees, you got all your other rates, and at the end of the day, if there's a flood in another side of the country, you get taxed at 0.5% more for the next 2 years just to pay for that. All right, so that's the reason why I'm going so heavy in property. That's the reason why I will be diversifying a lot of my funds into super. That's the reason why I'm going to be putting a little bit of money, maybe 2 to 5% into crypto once I stop buying property, and then I'll be putting at least a good portion of the money into stocks and ETFs. So hopefully I can get that up to 2, 3, 4, 5 million. So then I can realign that with my property portfolio and be diversified across all that. And from an ETFs point of view, most likely I'll do something like a VAS in Vanguard. I'll do a VTS, which covers the American market, all right, and I'll do something that covers the rest of the market, maybe put 5 or 10% in that. So I'll be diversified in 3 or 4 ETFs across the whole world. Okay, if you do it in that way, if you follow some FIRE communities, I'll be invested in over 7,500 stocks. I'll be diversified across the world. I'll have probably an exposure of about 40 to 50% in the Aussie market, about 30 to 40% in the American market, and then the last kind of whatever 5, 10 or 15% in the rest of the market, because obviously it's much smaller, but you still want exposures everywhere. And then all you do is you just allow your money to compound. All right, so I hope that this has given you a little bit of context on me. I hope you're not offended by what my views are, and my views are really against the system. It's got nothing to do with political parties. It's got nothing to do with do you want the jab or do you not want the jab. It's got nothing to do with are you pro what the government did or did not do for COVID-19 and the lockdowns. I'm just trying to tell you that I'm against all of that because it affects what I can and can't do. Okay, so some people, they're workers and they were public servants through that whole time. They're very supportive of what was done because they had their work the whole time. They had a good job. They could work from home. No one had to commute. So you've got at least 50% of the population that is happy with what happened. They don't care about their rights being taken away, their freedoms being taken away, because they weren't the ones that were bankrupted. They weren't the ones that were controlled. If you talk to some of these tradie clients that I had in Sydney that were in these LGAs that were affected, where they got these long lockdowns when tradies across Sydney that were not in the western suburbs could do whatever they want, and you go and talk to them about how the extra lockdowns affected their families. Okay, you go and talk to them about how every day they worked a 10 to 12 hour day because there were backlogs. Okay, and then not just that, every third day or something they had to get a COVID test, and if they didn't get the result the next day, they couldn't work. All right, so if you really got to spread, not just listening to mainstream media, and really you've got to open your network up and just talk with a lot of different types of people. All right, but at the end of the day, I don't care Liberal Labor, I don't care mandate or lockdown. I just don't like the whole system and the way this country is going, and I want to create my success. I want to create my financial freedom. I want to be able to do and say and be whoever I want to be, and I want to be that person that is that rock for my family, that I'm that backstop for my wife, my children, my parents who are getting older, and even my sister who I don't really get along with. I'm doing what I'm doing to help everyone in my family and not just me. So at the end of the day, that's the nuts and bolts. It is a little bit of a contentious topic on, whatever you think, but we've got a situation where we've got a federal election that's coming up, and really I just see much of a muchness. Labor's going to screw you, Liberals are going to screw you. If you're in the top tax bracket, everyone wants to milk their portion off you. All right, so you're the one that works hard. You're the one that have done everything you needed to get to that top. You've put in all the effort, and then they milk you as much as they can. All right, so at the end of the day, look, I want my income to be in that bracket, but I want to do it on my own terms, okay? Eventually, I want to get out of what I'm doing, maybe 5 to 10 years, and then I can retire between, age 40, 45 and just become a lifetime investor. All right, I want the ability to have choice and to do what I want when I want, okay? And I want to have my wealth spread across ETF, shares, crypto, property, spread all across. So I've got 5 properties in Brisbane. I've got 1 property in New South Wales. When the next downturn happens, I'll probably get a couple more there. I'm going to get hopefully 2 more in WA around the Perth market, and then maybe 1 or 2 in Adelaide. So I'm spread across the country. My stocks, ETFs spread across the world, and really there's enough cash flow coming from the property to support my wife and I and to do what we want. So we've got the option to go for the $1 to $1.5 to $2 million property if we want, or we can just get the 500-600 grand property, compound what we're doing for the next 10 years, and then decide really on if we want to sink money into a much nicer area property, a bigger property, maybe some acreage. I'm not sure. All right, but at the end of the day, I'm doing what I'm doing now. We had delayed gratification now. For the last 3+ years, we've been rent investing. All right, everyone's been telling us to get the nicer car. I'm driving a Suzuki Swift 2007 model. It does me well. I get up the street, perfect, no issues. I've had it since day one. Everyone's been telling me to get a new car. Everyone's been telling me to get an owner-occupied property. I've got the income to purchase in my parents' area right now up to 2 million. Okay, I've got the income to do that. But have I made that stupid decision? No, I haven't. What I've done is I've leveraged investment debt to a point where in a 3-year period, I might be sitting on maybe 3 to 3.5 million in investment debt, all sitting on interest only, with the payment being anywhere from about 100, so it all depends on what I buy in the next kind of 6 months, but the payment will be anywhere from about 100 to 140,000 depending on how hard I go, and the rent that I'll have at that period of time will be anywhere from about 300,000 to 400,000. So by the time I cap myself out, I'll be in a position where net inflows is going to be over $200,000, and that's compared the difference between my interest only payment and what rent I've got coming in. All right, and I've even worked that out on the higher interest rates. So anyone that thinks I'm not adding buffers in, but at the end of the day, rates would have to go probably up more than probably 4 to 5% for me to feel any hurt whatsoever. And that just means that a portion of my business income now needs to be used to sustain the properties. And by that time, if we go up 4 or 5%, the whole country's imploded. All right, I'm sitting on investment debt of 6 to 8% rental yields. Okay, if I blow up, the whole country blows up. All right, so it doesn't really matter. The whole country's blown up. All right, so I've done it in a very conservative way. The cash flow is high. The properties have gone up so much that I purchased most on 90% deposits, but right now I'm sitting on maybe a 70 to 75% LVR right now, and it's been less than 3 years, while I've continued to pull money out for my future deposits. And here I am. Very soon I'll have over $2 million worth of investment debt, and my wife is sitting there as if she's not stressed in the world. She's sitting there as if she doesn't have $2 million worth of investment debt against her name. Okay, all it's doing is sitting there, paying it off, increasing the money in the offsets. The properties are going up slowly in value. I don't care if it goes up this year or next year or the next year. I've got the cash flow to ride out whatever the system is. Okay, so if everyone thinks these interest rates are going to crash property, it may have a neutral effect on Sydney and Melbourne, where they stagnate for a period of time. All right, but you might see a 5, 10, 15% correction because the market's gone up so heavy. All right, but if you've got 60 to 80,000 people over a 2-year period from New South Wales and Victoria, most of them were in Sydney and Melbourne, have gone up to Queensland for the lifestyle change, for the weather, because they had less lockdowns than any other state, okay, and they did well with what they did with the state border. And some people have their own thoughts on why you can even control a state border in this country, okay, but let's just talk about the 60 to 80,000 people. 75% of them settled on the Gold Coast and Brisbane. Okay, the other maybe 5 or 10% went to Sunshine, and then the rest went northeast Queensland. All right, so if you want to look at the numbers and the property prices, I mean, you can get 30 to 40 kilometre ring in Sydney. You can't get much for under 1.5 now. 1.5 million. But you look at Brisbane and you can still get 30 kilometre ring for under 600,000. People are flocking there. Okay, yes, there's a lot of my properties are based there, but there's a massive rental crisis too. Property rents have gone up 10 to 15% in the last 12 months. You put a property up for rent and you're seeing 5, 10, 15 applications, and most of the time people are offering to pay rent up front, and they're offering not just that, half of them are offering more than you've advertised in the rent, which you can't accept as a landlord up there unless you relist the property at the new price and then you accept, which costs you a little bit more, but there is a way to do that and be compliant. All right, so I'm seeing rental surge, I'm seeing supply of housing going down, I'm seeing builders and developers all getting hit. There was a building association, all right. They put out a notice about 2-3 weeks ago, and they said they've run analytics, and over 50% of builders right now are trading insolvently. So if you've got all of these developers, all these builders, they've got worker shortages, they've got supply shortages with what's happening with China, okay, they've got issues with time dates, they've got issues with fixed price contracts, locking them into prices that have now become unsustainable. You've got inflation going through the roof, and you've got to wonder, people think that this rental crisis is going to get better. It's not. 3, 5, 7 years. It's going to be out there as long as inflation is. And if you add a supply issue with the next 2, 3, 4 years of no supply coming onto the market for properties to meet the demand, the rental crisis is only going to get worse and the rental prices are only going to go higher. All right, so I'm putting granny flats on the back of as many properties as I can in Brisbane right now. And that's the reason why I'm going so hard in investment properties at the moment. And if people understand inflation and they think it's bad for property, then you've got to really understand what property is and how well it does in an inflationary environment. If you're paying 3 to 3.5% investment interest only rates, but inflation is 5.2% at the RBA level, the ASIC level, whoever's running the metrics, then really that inflation is eroding the debt that you've got, okay? Because the inflation rate is higher than the interest rate is at the current point. And not just that, inflation isn't 5.1, 5.2%. If you use the calculation methods that they used back in the 1980s, all right, you use the same calculation methods, we've already gone past 15% inflation. The worst month in the 1980s was just over 15% inflation. We've already gone past that. Okay, and people think that the government and the RBA can control this level of inflation. They can't. Okay, they've printed too much money. We've got over $1 trillion worth of debt right now sitting on the federal level, the state level, and all the other different levels of government. All right, so you're in a position where inflation is a runaway train. All right, so if you hold assets at 3 and 3.5%, but true inflation is hitting you at 15%, all right, it's almost like you've got no debt. All right, all the risk associated with holding the debt has gone because your asset appreciation is going up so much. And not just that, let's talk about borders. Okay, let's talk about when the true influx of migrants are going to be back to this country, because everyone's still gun shy to travel internationally. All right, we've hardly even seen the students come back to the universities now, and a lot of them aren't coming back because they don't know if they're going to get locked out again. All right, and we're 2+ years away from when COVID started. So we've got a rental crisis right now. We've got property prices that have surged, and everyone's saying that the interest rates will flatten out, or the media is saying that there'll be a massive drop. What happens when all of these international people on 517 visas, skilled visas, all the workers come back to the country? What happens when all of the students come back and they want rentals? Okay, this is only going to compound what's going to happen, and you're going to see that play out over the next, maybe 4 years, because we think that if you follow Phil Anderson, he's a property economic analyst, and he's written a book on the property cycle. You can't really pick what the next big drop is going to be, and you can't really say, who's going to do what. But I'll give you an example. In late 2019. I knew that something big was happening, all right? And this is how I look at the world, all right? So late 1980s interest rate crisis, okay? After that, before that, you had the inflation problems, which was the 1960s and 70s, okay? After the 1980s, you had the dot-com bust. After the dot-com bust, in 2008, you had the GFC. After that, you had a mid-level correction, which was 2014, 2015, and the credit crunch and a lot of the EU issues. 5-6 years after that, you had, again, a mid-level crisis, and you had your COVID, all right? And now we're at our point now. So normally you have kind of a 14-year period where something big happens. So in 2019, I sat my dad down, and I didn't know, it was late 2019, and I said, no matter what you think in the world and what your views are on politics, I said, I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, it could be a civil war with the Black Lives Matter riots in America. It could be Europe migrant issues with 5 million Africans coming into Europe. It could be a South China Sea issue with borders and all those little islands. It could be Trump effect, civil war. I said, I don't know what it's going to be, but something's going to happen. And I said, look, I can never pick when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen most likely in the next 12 to 24 months. So I said, you need to look at it. All right. So then I got Dad to shift his portfolio into a very, because he's, in his 60s. So I got him in a position where he was in a defensive portfolio, and I got him in a position where he changed the settings where quickly, because if you change your super, it can take you 2 weeks to change it. So I got him to change that to like a 1 or 2 day one where he's got more control. And then lo and behold, within 3 months, COVID-19 started. All right, so that's the view on the world. So my view is somewhere around 2026 to 2028, something's going to happen. I don't know what it is, so I'll buy up until probably start of 2023. And then from there, I will be in a situation where I'm going to stack offsets. My values will continue going up. Okay, I'm going to figure out if I want to use that offset money to pay down the debt or just have the liquidity sitting in my offset. Okay, use my business income to continually stack money in that. I'm going to put money into the stock market, ETFs, super as well. And then essentially I'm going to use a 3 to 4 to 5 year process whenever the next crash happens to de-risk myself. Okay, so not buy any more, not take on any more debt. Stack offsets, stack stocks, stack ETFs, stack super, and make myself pretty much, I can't crash at the next crash, whenever it's going to be. All right, so that's really what I'm doing. So I hope that you've liked this video. I hope it hasn't offended too many people, whether or not you believe in a lot of the things that are happening, but we can say that the changes in this country have been profound. Okay, and the difference between 2019 and now, things are changing. All right, and I don't agree, and I don't like a lot of the changes. I don't agree with a lot of the things that are happening, and whether or not you agree or you don't, you personally know that this country has changed since 2019. All right, so whether or not you agree with that or not, the question really that you want to ask yourself is, do you want to be a part of the system, and do you want to exit the matrix? Okay, do you want your control back, and do you want your ability to make decisions and have the choice in your life? And the answer that I gave myself was yes. All right, and that involved a 3+ year, so I'm in my 3rd year now, 3+ year of delayed gratification. So we didn't get any credit cards, we didn't get any personal loans, no car loans, no student debt, no HEX debt, no zip pay, no afterpay, no fancy cars. We just had the basics, and we enjoyed our lives together while we rented and bought investment properties. And if you do that consistently over a 3 or 5 year period, you will reap the results. And I really hope that you do get to where you want in life. But if you do that, you've got to do it in a way that is against what the mainstream and society tells you to do and operate your life. You've got to operate your lives in pretty much the opposite fashion to get you the end result that you want. All right, so if you follow what everyone else is doing, you get the results that everyone else gets. All right, let's be completely honest. So the only way that you're going to exit that system is by doing the opposite of what a lot of people do, and try and get a mentor in this kind of space that can allow you to get the control, get the structures, set yourself on the right path, and then get yourself to that end result that you want to. And it's not going to be quick. I mean, a lot of people in the FIRE community, they go down the stock and ETFs route, and even if they're saving 60-70% of their money, at the end of the day, you're still in a position where even 5 and 10 years later, it's still hard to retire, but you can do it a lot quicker if you focus on Australian property. And the reason why I focused on property myself is that we live in a very different country from the world. Okay, our country is very funny when we look at property compared to everyone else out there. And no one knows how our country truly works until they live here. All right, you've got 90% of the population want to live on 10 to 15% of the land. Okay, and not just that, 90% of those people want to live on the eastern seaboard. All right, so we live in a country that's very dense in certain areas, and it's a very big country with not a lot of people wanting to live in the center or regional areas away from water. So everyone's on the border, okay, but most people want to be on the eastern seaboard. All right, and that means that there's a lot of pressure on a small amount of properties, and this phenomenon is not going to stop. It's going to continue, and it's going to continue and continue. All right, people think property prices can't go up in this country, and they don't look at cities like New York, where if you're in the center, you're looking at 20, 30, 40 million dollar apartments and townhomes in the center of Sydney, in the center of those areas like New York. Okay, we've still got cities like Brisbane where you can get within 40 kilometers of the CBD. You're looking at properties that are under 400,000 in value. All right, and you don't think property prices can go up? You watch over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and really you're right at the beginning of an inflation boom. And what they say about inflation is inflation beats the middle class. Okay, there's a portion of the middle class that owns property and a portion that don't. And even if you're on high income, if you don't own property and you're riding an inflation boom, money means nothing. All right, so you see a massive transfer of wealth, okay, in times of inflation, okay, and inflation kills the middle class. All right, a lot of the wealth goes to the people that are the investors, the 1%, the other people that hold assets and ride this kind of boom. All right, so please like, subscribe, and comment. Leave me a comment on these kind of videos, see if you like it, and we'll see you on the next one. Have a great day. All right, bye.